Yes, Swinson.
Indeed, Mr. Allner, and of course it's a great pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I would also like to congratulate the Honourable Member for Hendon for introducing this debate very comprehensively, outlining areas where progress has been made and covering a whole range of the issues in this very complex case. It's been very helpful during the debate to hear the experiences of honourable members who have indeed visited Cyprus and spoken with their constituents who have a link to that country, and also heard firsthand from the individuals, whether that's the relatives of the missing or others, about the difficulties that they are facing. And I always think that that brings something to these debates that we have in this House. Looking back on the honourable members' last adjournment debate on this issue in the 15th of January of this year, I think, sadly, even his cautious optimism back then about the prospects for reunification now needs somewhat further qualification, and I think that is a great shame. However, the honourable member for Enfield Southgate, I think, did make the point rather well, saying, there are talks happening. And there is that political will on both sides. So despite all of the difficulties, we have to welcome this and hope that this opportunity to lead to a peaceful solution with equality and rights for both communities will actually go forward. I would also echo the comments made by many honourable members about the particular timing of this debate in the week of the 20th anniversary celebrations of the fall of the Berlin Wall, when we are discussing a divided island, a divided capital. And I do hope that those fabulous celebrations can act as an inspiration to renewal of efforts in this case. But there obviously is a ticking clock here, because, as many commentators have noted, the presidential elections in the north in April are quite likely to see nationalists elected, and that would clearly do very, very serious damage to the ongoing negotiations. The progress so far has been slow, but we do have this window of opportunity at the moment, with both governments being pro-reunification, and the fact that this is liable to end in just a few months must mean that there is a renewed urgency. The consequences of no solution have been pointed out by the International Crisis Group, where they say a failure to reach settlement could result in slow economic progress, greater defence spending, and reduced international credibility for the Republic of Cyprus, the TRNC, and indeed for Turkey. David Hannay, the UK Special Representative for Cyprus from 1996 to 2003, has said the prominent role played by those outside Cyprus may have been detrimental, allowing Greek and Turkish Cypriots to blame outsiders for the failure of the talks. I would argue, I think the Cypriots on both sides must own the negotiations at every stage, or they are bound to fail. That, I would add, doesn't mean outsiders have no role, but it should be discreet and aim to persuade rather than coerce Greek and Turkish Cypriots. The Honourable Member for Hendon mentioned the natural deadlines, and obviously the December assessment of Turkey's EU accession is another of those. I'm personally very much in favour of Turkey joining the EU, not least for the symbolism of accepting a Muslim country into what some can still perceive as being very much a Christian club. But of course the possibility of Turkey's accession to the EU presents a very curious catch-22 situation. On the one hand, the EU is unlikely to agree to admit Turkey until a settlement is reached on Cyprus. On the other hand, Turkey is unlikely to support settlement acceptable to Greek Cypriots if it feels the EU isn't sufficiently progressing its application. David Hannay wrote in September, "So long as there is breath in the body of Turkey's EU accession aspirations, there will be some hope for a Cyprus settlement." And I would argue the EU has got an important role to play here. I think, as we have seen in other parts of Europe, such as in the Balkans, the prospect of accession can actually be used as a very effective incentive and a negotiating tool. I'm not saying the EU's necessarily always got that right in the past in terms of how that's been used, but I certainly think that is one factor which should be used positively. I would just like to make the point that Turkey is often blamed for lack of progress on the Cyprus issue, as people will say that Ankara hasn't pushed hard enough for peace, but it's not actually entirely true. The Turkish government under PM Erdogan, the campaign for a yes vote in the Annan Plan in 2004, whereas the Greek Cypriot government under Mr. Papadopoulos campaigned for a no vote. However, Turkey could do more to progress the negotiations, especially obviously implementing the Ankara Protocol and opening all its ports to EU trade. And there's no reason, I would argue, for maintaining such a huge presence of Turkish troops in Cyprus, and movement has to be made on the issue of reducing the number. Turkish Cypriots, though, obviously feel very disillusioned, having voted yes to the Annan Plan. They continue to be very politically isolated and economically disadvantaged. Young people can't take part in the national sporting or cultural events, and look across the Green Line to the Greek Cypriots with enjoying the full benefits of EU membership and flourishing economically and socially. And obviously this does lead to genuine grievances, and on both sides the property issues have also been raised. And we've heard in this debate some ideas of the types of confidence-building measures that could be put forward to make progress. It's not for us in the UK to resolve all those individual difficult issues at stake, but we should be an honest broker and be able to take a neutral position and support Cypriot solutions. I would like to raise one point with the Minister, a point of concern which has been raised with me by the Lib Dem Friends of Turkey, who have expressed a concern amongst Turkish Cypriots in the UK at the Prime Minister's decision to meet with President Christofias tomorrow. Tomorrow is also the first day of a High Court hearing of the controversial Rams property case, and this can be interpreted, with the meeting being on the same day, as possibly taking sides in the case. Now, obviously, it's not for us to be involved in international law, but we should be seeking to appear neutral, and it would be welcome if the Minister could reassure Turkish Cypriots in the UK that the government is not taking sides. I would also encourage the Minister and the government generally to meet with both Cypriot communities here in the UK to help build consensus and confidence. And I understand from Turkish Cypriots that have been in contact with me that the government has met with a particular group of Labour supporting Turkish Cypriots, but perhaps not with the whole mainstream. So I would be interested in the Minister's comments on that. I would also just like to pick up the Honourable Member for Hendon's point in the debate back in January about the €50,000 donation for demining to the UN Mine Action Centre in Cyprus, which is obviously an example of something which is very symbolic to demine the buffer zone, but also in terms of building confidence. I wonder if we could have any update on how that's been spent, and given the €5 million shortfall that had been referred to, whether there's been any possibility of convincing the other EU counterparts to give more to this important fund. In conclusion, Mr. Williams, I would concur with the conclusions of, I think, pretty much everybody that has spoken today, that the longer it takes to reach a settlement, the more likely the division of Cyprus will become permanent. And that would obviously have huge negative consequences for regional stability and economic development. As a guarantor power with strong relationships in Cyprus, the UK ought to have a significant influence in the situation, although it should obviously be exercised discreetly. We should also be using our voice at the EU and the UN to push for redoubled efforts to use this window of opportunity to create conditions where these talks can succeed, bearing in mind these very imminent natural deadlines.